I'm going to spend some time listening because there may be some priorities that both the Republican and Democratic leaders have that they want to raise at this meeting. My hope is this is not going to be a rare situation. We're going to be doing these on a regular basis.
In the words of Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner, good luck with that.
We'll see just how regular this basis is. Top Line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Chalian.
And I'm Rick Klein.
Each weekday we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And it's twitter.com/The Note where we talk politics, maybe even a little weather as Washington digs out and braces for another one.
You just couldn't resist.
It's about the weather.
Get us started. What's your top line?
Big freeze. Actually, that's not a headline about the weather. It's about the partisanship and the feeling right now about whether there's a possibility for this bipartisan meeting on health care that would happen later this month at the White House. Republican leaders signaling a lot of skepticism about this, sending a letter to the chief of staff of the White House, Rahm Emanuel, saying this is fine if you lay down some conditions like let's start over with the health care bill that seem nonsensical. There's just no chance that this is going to happen. A lot of gamesmanship right now as they lead into what might be a summit that doesn't even happen.
Asking for preconditions from the administration that promises no preconditions for their negotiations, right? But it does seem that this bipartisan push that the president wants is suffering a little bit of crib death. And so we'll have to see where it goes from here. Patterson pushback, just a fascinating development, especially if you're into political journalism at all, going on in New York right now. Rick, as you know, David Patterson has been suffering from a week's worth of swirling rumors, anticipated story coming from the New York Times. We here at ABC, by the way, we have no original reporting on this story whatsoever. The tabloids going nuts on it. He sits down with the Associated Press, Governor Patterson does, already in total trouble for his reelect, and then gives this interview saying that he is this victim of these rumors, really pushing back on this notion that he's about to implode in some way, and we're all still waiting for the New York Times to drop this story.
It's absolutely bizarre. And then the idea of giving an interview, pushing back against allegations that actually haven't been aired because other media have been airing it, it feeds a perception of a campaign or a campaign moving toward a campaign in crisis over there because they're waiting for the next shoe to drop. But it is just bizarre to watch.
It also really calls into question how we in the press report these things right now. Yeah.
Right. Remembering Murtha, John Murtha, a legislative giant in just about every sense, had passed away yesterday at age 77. Of course, the political world in mourning and remembering John Murtha, and in terms of moving past that, it does mean that we are going to have another special election, and it's going to be in one of these tightly contested districts. Pennsylvania's got a number of hot races in 2010, and it's going to include this Johnstown-Page district that has been represented by Congressman Murtha for 30-something years.
Yeah, no doubt. As you know, it's the one congressional district that flipped, that voted for Kerry in 2004 and then McCain in 2008. I also think Murtha's legacy as the king of pork is something that will be remembered for days to come as well. Few people had the ability to sort of bring home the bacon the way this
and brag about it.
And brag about it, no doubt. And finally, Michelle's cause. Yes, the First Lady of the United States stepped up into the issue spotlight today with her battle against childhood obesity. She stood behind the president's desk in the Oval Office as he signed an executive order with some cabinet members around him as well. This really now is probably the highest profile that Michelle Obama has gotten in terms of an issue, which means that this is going to be part of her legacy. I mean, now there's going to be a metric to go back and see, well, how did this battle with childhood obesity go? We know it's a big epidemic in the country, and now she's putting some skin in the game.
That's right, and this is one of those causes, like a lot of first ladies, they go on a cause, maybe reading, literacy, it's hard to be against, but there is some controversy here, and it's interesting to see how far they push it, because the inevitable response is, well, don't be telling me what I can feed my kid.
And she addressed that this morning on Good Morning America with her interview with Robin Roberts. Be sure to check out abcnews.com to see more of that interview. We are going to begin with that call for bipartisanship and the future of healthcare as the White House seems to be putting out a roadmap now, or some sort of roadmap. We're joined by Jane Hampshire of FireDogLake.com. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Jane, you wrote today, based off of a report that was in The Hill today about Rahm Emanuel sort of being blamed by some congressional Democrats for the death of healthcare. You said nothing indicates more that healthcare is dead than these kinds of obits that happen after legislation dies. So you said dead as a door nail. You see no hope for this health care legislation that passed the Senate and the House now.
Well, look at Massachusetts. You've got every politician on the left and right running in fear of health care reform because of what happened in Massachusetts. So anybody is going to be putting a very, very tentative foot forward, particularly vulnerable Democrats, looking at low Democratic turnout in 2010. And they're all running to the right, which I don't quite understand because it's the Democrats who have to turn out for them. So you explain it to me, but I don't see a lot of movement. I think it's sort of glacial.
If you were to revive health care at this point, would you do it the way the president is, by calling in Republicans and saying, let's have a big summit?
I think that it's actually a really good idea. I think he was very good last week, the week before, at the Republican summit.
Yeah.
And one of the big fictions that has happened all along that people keep perpetuating is that the Republicans haven't been consulted in this. Well, that is, after all, what dragged this out for months, which was Max Baucus and the Senate Finance Committee bending over backwards to get support from Republicans. So let's do it in public where we'll have the document of videotape so that we can see that they've been consulted.
You think that's the play, though, is to just lay bare the strategy?
Yeah. Well,
Not to think that there's Republicans who are going to vote for health care.
I can't imagine that they actually will vote for health care, but I think that ultimately the White House needs to pass something in health care. And it probably won't be this big omnibus, this big mess of a bill that they put together. So let's talk about individual plans. You've got Paul Ryan, who says that the way to cut costs is to freeze Medicare. Well, that isn't going over very well with the Republicans in the Senate, who just spent months demagoguing Medicare cuts on the floor.
And you see the Republican leadership in the House has not yet sort of embraced that Ryan roadmap.
Exactly. So they're a little bit, they don't quite have their act together either.
But it sounds like what you're saying is that it is not crazy for John Boehner to send this letter over to Rahm Emanuel, basically, and request this idea of starting from scratch. You say that those big House and Senate bills, it sounds like what I'm hearing you say, really not going anywhere. So at least that's a precondition that the White House can agree to here. Let's scrap those big bills.
Well, I think he's doing it for political purposes, not because there's anything specific that he hopes to gain. I mean, their big goal here is to look reasonable. And I don't think that they have any plans to do that. If everybody was talking about what they were going to do to truly cut healthcare costs, which is what everybody says they want to do, they'd start by doing Medicare prescription drug price negotiation, which is what the Democrats passed in 2006 when they first got into office. Even Obama said on the campaign trail that cuts $30 billion a year off of healthcare costs. There's drug price reimportation. You could close the donut hole with things like this, but neither the Republicans nor the Democrats are going to propose this because they're looking at pharma as their big campaign donors. So it's all sort of for show, I think. But I think it does put an end to the lie that the Republicans haven't been consulted.
As you know, some centrist, moderate Democrats are a little uneasy about the fact that there's this summit because it guaranteeing that health care is going to be the thing that gets talked about for at least several more weeks. They just as soon be done with this. Maybe pick it up in the spring after people forget about it a little bit. But what do you make of that? I mean, is there an argument to be made for let's forget about health care for a little while and just focus on the topic today, jobs?
Well, the centrist Democrats, if you're talking about the ones in the Senate who actually crafted this bill and demanded that all of their pet projects be put in before it could be passed, don't want to take ownership of it.
These are all good friends of yours.
Yeah, Blanche Lincoln, Eva Bye, we're like this. They ought to take ownership of this bill because they're the ones who wrote it. It was their demands that were catered to, even though they were extremely unpopular. So, they want to move on. Well, they shouldn't have authored this thing in the first place in the way that they did.
I agree with you about the Republicans with that letter trying to do some political posturing in advance of this. There's no doubt both sides trying to sort of get the best out of this announcement that the president made that he wants to hold this summit. And the Republicans felt that they got a little rolled in that Baltimore event. I mean, they claim they don't feel that way, but some of them talking privately certainly think the president came out looking really good at that event. They want to make sure that's not the case this time. And I'm wondering, is there a potential loss here for the White House politically? Do they look like perhaps the ones that won't move off of a position if they're not willing to move beyond these two bills?
Well, that remains to be seen. We'll see what happens with this particular, event.
Although we've already seen a response from them to that letter, right?
We have, but they've said no, we're not going to have any preconditions. We still think that this health care bill is the best way to move it forward. I personally don't think they can move it, but that's just a subjective opinion. I think that there are things that they could do, like ending the antitrust exemption that the insurance companies have. That would be very popular and would be very helpful in lowering costs. You could stop having these protected monopolies. There are things that they can do so they can say, yes, we've done something on healthcare, something Americans very, very much want to have happen. And but I worry that neither the Republicans nor the Democrats are going to have the courage to stand up to their donors like that.
Very quickly, Jane, any update on the balloting? You guys have been running a contest at
We
Fire Dog
have.
Lake.
Actually, there is a big switch in the winner today. We have been holding a contest to support Democrats in the House among our readers. Historically, in the past, we've supported challengers to open seats, Republican seats, but this time we're looking at losing a lot of Democratic seats potentially. So we're asking our readers, who do we want to save? Who do they want to get in and raise money for? So in the past, we've been announcing the results every day, updates on the balloting, and it's been pretty much Alan Grayson, Dennis Kucinich, Eric Massa, the Raul Grijalva. But today we have a big upset. Somebody came on really strong last night. So the balloting ends tonight at midnight. FireDogLake.com. You can
Check
vote.
it out.
All right, I love
Jane
it.
Hampshire, FireDogLake.com. Thank you very
Thanks,
much
Jane.
for being here. Appreciate it.